Welcome back to Combined by Alana. I have a super special guest today. He's a colon-hydrotherapist, master of deep tissue cleansing, a holistic health coach, and former chef at Angelica's Kitchen, a legendary vegan restaurant in the East Village that sadly closed its doors in 2017. In this episode, Mike and I get a little chefy and hone in on our love of food. This episode is truly about how food can not only taste good, but it can make you feel good. Mike and I do our fair share of shit talking on diet culture, and I also gave him a rapid fire opinion drop about trendy foods in the zeitgeist at the end of the episode. So without further ado, here's my interview with Mike Perrine. Mike, welcome to Combined by Alana.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it so much.
Totally. No, I don't normally do virtual chats, but you're certainly an exception, and I'm happy to make it for you.
Thank you. I never wanted to do virtual anything, and I always wanted my podcast to be in person, and I would always say no to some guests that were just like, hey, I'm not going to be anywhere near you, but I want to do it. And I would just be like, sorry, I love it to be in person. And then the pandemic happened, and that was that. And the world changed, and technology caught up. And even though we've had our technological challenges with this morning, we're making it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Full disclosure, anyone who's watching, this is our third take. We literally haven't even gotten really into the conversation, but there have been tech issues, but it's not a big deal. We both have so much energy that it's just taking over, but it's okay. We're going to make it work. It'll happen. I had a lot of fun on your podcast. We certainly did a lot of shit talking. It was perfectly titled Knowledge Over Product. So definitely some things to expect if anyone hasn't listened to it. If you have not, then it's going to be in the show notes. But I just want to continue our conversation and also talk a little bit more about food because I'm a chef. You're a classically trained chef. You worked in a kitchen, and there's so much to discuss that we didn't even get to before. But I want to first dive into your background a bit. And just how you got into the cleansing life and how you got into cleansing in general. I know that in your early teens, late 20s, you read Autobiography by Malcolm X, and then, right there. And then you read Diet for a New America. You got into self-education. You became vegan. I just want to hear all about that because that's such a radical shift as well.
Let me tell you something too. It was really radical. It was a radical thing to do in, when I did that 30 years ago, because nobody was doing it. And even when I was eating vegan and eating, I was like, am I going to be okay? It wasn't just something that everyone had done. It was a very small group of people. There was no internet back then. So you didn't actually know how big the community of people that were trying to eat plant-based food was. You would go to some rare little events and book signings and things like that and get a sense that there was a community around it. But it wasn't as obvious as it is today, and there wasn't as many people doing it. But I had gone to a very dark place with alcohol and drugs and cigarettes and horrible food, just as soon as I got autonomy over what I could do, I went for all of the indulgent stuff, and I did. And it destroyed my body even by the age of 18 and 19. And one day I was in my parents' basement and I picked up that book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X. And I read that book and it just blew my mind. And the biggest lesson I took from it was self-responsibility, because that was one of the things that he taught and really lived his life by. And in Malcolm's case, there was a lot of forces and powers of the world negatively coming at him and his community. And the way out of it for him and a lot of the other people in the Nation of Islam and people associated with Malcolm, it wasn't victimhood, even though they were clearly victims. It wasn't to be a victim. It was self-empowerment and self-responsibility. So they lived very clean lives. They ate clean food. They didn't drink, smoke. They didn't use alcohol. They had these strict religious lives. And there's a lot of discipline involved in that that was required to really build themselves up and get out of this, sort of umbrella of oppression and all these forces working against them, like alcohol infiltrating the community and all these things that infiltrate all of us. And I realized I was like, wow, I'm being a total victim here. I'm smoking cigarettes, I'm drinking alcohol, I'm destroying my body, I'm giving money to these corporate interests that have no concern for myself or my health or the environment or anything like that. So I stopped all of that. And I make that sound easy, but it was a challenge to stop drinking drugs and cigarettes. And then I went into the food part of it. I walked into my local health food store in Staten Island, New York, And some friends of mine had told me about a book called Diet for a New America. And there was like a lot of vegans in the New York City hardcore music scene, you know, which were a lot of friends of mine. And I was like, okay, I'm going to read this book. And when I read that book, it was the first time that I had ever really understood how animals were being treated, how cruelly they were being treated, about pesticide residues in food, about the relationship between diet and disease. I had no idea. And I was like 19. I was like college age, like mind wide open, like ready to go. So I was like vegan in like 24 hours, you know, and I detoxed hard and I didn't know what was happening to me. Yeah, I mean, I lost about 60 pounds in 3 to 4 months, which is pretty rapid, and a lot of fevers and body aches and pimples and headaches and all the things when your body is so loaded with toxicity, because I put so much garbage in for so many years. And not to mention my family always tried to do the right thing, but we're talking like 70s and 80s normal conventional family. So, you know, I was eating all sorts of like pizza, pasta, mac and cheese. Like, you know, I wasn't like really eating like a vital, like vibrant diet. So, you know, so many years of that. I mean, we had 19 years of that, formula fed for most of my infancy. So stuff was really coming out of me. My body stripped itself down. It completely rebuilt itself. I didn't really, you know, I was losing weight very quickly. And I was feeling good, but when I wasn't in those stages of detox, I was feeling good, but like I wasn't necessarily looking good. And it wasn't until I met Dr. Fred Bishy, and he was like, listen, you're going through a process. He's like, this isn't the result of your diet. He's like, this is the process is the result of your diet. You're in a process. You need to come out on the other side of it. You're in a detoxification, a stripping down, and a rebuilding process. He's like, you see yourself through on the other side and you'll be great. And I did. And it took a while to get through it. And I mean, that was some of the greatest advice I'd ever been given. And that's how we got.
I have clients that, you know, they're going through it too, and they're going through the detox symptoms, and it seems like they want to give up. How did you not give up? Was it the help of Dr. Bishy, or was it just you just knew it was going to be better?
It was because I was so young and determined. B, it was with the help of Dr. Bishy. C, it was people like John Robbins, who wrote Diet for a New America, and all these different organizations and people that had been thriving, living that way. And once I understood that, you know, my body and my chemistry was a result of everything I'd been doing for the last 19 years, and it needed to rebalance itself, I just trusted the process and I went through it. Unfortunately, I didn't know a lot of the things that I know about today. I didn't know about colonics. I didn't find out about those till 7 years later. Even things like a massage or something like that would just be like a nice deep tissue release to kind of like, you know, to create certain like saunas and things to like create like, you know, good blood flow and lymph flow and all that. I just didn't know about that. Like steam rooms were, for me, they were like for like Wall Street brokers cutting deals somewhere in a health club down on Water Street, you know, like yeah. So like I didn't have access to the practices and principles, but luckily I was young. My body really worked through it. I probably suffered a little more than I had to, and with detox symptoms, but ultimately that was good for me because it helped me as a practitioner to then understand how it works.
Yeah, and you were vegan. So what vegan foods were you eating then? Because obviously it's changed now.
Well, right out the gate, most of what I ate, like 90% of what I ate, was raw salad. Had no idea how to make a salad dressing, so I used to just eat them plain. And I would drink juice, a lot of carrot, no oil, nothing like that. Like I didn't know how to use it at the time. Now, years later, I became a natural food chef, and now I know how to make great things. And of course, now we have the internet and Instagram and all this stuff. So like people throwing recipes around all over, but recipes were really hard to come by. So I would go to like my mom's like Reader's Digest, you know, whatever, like books she got in the mail with like some dish. And I'd be like, I'm going to put tofu in instead of chicken, or like I didn't really know what I was doing. And then but you know, I was getting there. I was working through it. So I knew that Dr. Bishy wanted me to drink raw juice and eat a lot of raw salads. So I did that. And then I would make these macro bowls. And it was basically just like some type of whole grain, quinoa, brown rice, some type of like tofu, tempeh, or beans, some type of seaweed, and then some steamed vegetables. And I would always make one thing. The only dressing thing I knew how to make was miso tahini. Tahini, miso, and water. And I put that on everything for like 4 years. I literally like on everything, on every dinner I had. And of course, I would eat lots of fruits in the morning, and I would have like, you know, millet and oatmeal and stuff. And so it was a very clean diet compared to anything I was doing before that. I mean, I used to pass out with like cheese fries on me drunk at 2 in the morning, like 5 nights a week. Like,
Yeah.
it's a huge graduation. It's a huge level above what I was doing. And sometimes I would go to those like fake meat places in the early days. Like there's a place called Vegetarian Heaven, and probably not that healthy, but if I were going out to see live music or something, I'd go to one of those spots.
Yeah. What do you think of miso tahini today?
I still do it all the time.
Yeah. I wondered this because obviously, like, I love miso, like the taste, of course, it's umami, it's all the things that we love. But it's a soybean with a seed. Is that what do you make of that? Is that bad?
It's actually, and you could get them as different beans. So there's chickpea
Hmm.
miso, there's soy miso, there's all those things, and there's grain in it too because there's rice in it. After that fermentation process, I don't even know if I classify. First of all, I classify miso as a living food at that point. It's not even you start out with cooked rice. You start out with cooked bean of some kind. Once it goes through that process, it's almost like when you take your compost and turn it into soil. It's like when you look, bother me. It's like a tablespoon of miso in with the tahini, and yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. That's
So
good.
miso, tahini, I put a little bit of garlic powder, and then some people put nutritional yeast, and then some lemon juice, and it's just like it's great.
Yum. That sounds fabulous. I might make that like tomorrow or something. It sounds so good.
So good.
Uh, yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. I read though that you were in a job in Midtown and then you realized you wanted to become a chef.
Yeah,
Can you talk about that?
I was working a job and it's getting completely full of toxicity. It was a job in Midtown in Little Korea, and it was this production studio. And this was before digital was like really accessible. So we used to do
Hmm.
multi-image slideshows. So that's like when you have like 12 or 15 projectors, and then you make all these slides and it rolls through music and it makes this beautiful presentation with like boom, 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 boom. And anyway, that's what I used to do. And I used to develop this film and take care of this processor and work on the computers and do all this stuff. And I was just loaded with like toxic photochemicals. Like I was breathing them in all day. I was getting them on my skin. It was really messed up. And I remember, and then I was also going to school at night. And I remember sitting in class and I was thinking about some brownies they made at this health food restaurant, the health food restaurant, the most amazing restaurant, Angelica Kitchen. And I was thinking like, how can I make those at home? And then I was sitting in this psychology class in college at night after work. And I was like, I would love the most stressful part of my day to be, did these brownies need more chocolate? Like, because
Yeah.
I was realizing I was really into food, especially having become plant-based and learning about all these new fruits and vegetables and grains and beans. And, it was more than just, I was more into it than just like going to the store and buying a can of chickpeas. Like I wanted to get those heirloom Native American beans. And like, I wanted to start, like, I was really recognizing that I was like a food nerd and I really wanted to get into some of these things. And I happened to be in a health food store in Midtown, and I was getting lunch, and I saw this pamphlet for the Natural Gourmet Institute for Food and Health. And I was like, I am going there. And within a month, I think I was enrolled in that school, and I
So
went there.
cool.
That was a great school, but it's not around anymore. It's been absorbed by a larger culinary school. But the founder, Anne Marie Colbin, passed away. She was an older woman when she passed away, and yeah, it's not there anymore. But
Then you ultimately worked at Angelica Kitchen.
I did. That was my goal. That was the gold standard of vegan cuisine at the time. It was very macrobiotic based, but it was so incredibly creative. And I worked there for 7 years, and it's like my high school. The night that they closed after 40 plus years, I sat down in the office with Leslie, the owner, and it was very like sort of heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. And she had written on her forearm, "Don't be upset because it's over. Be glad that it happened." And I was like, I love that, you know.
Yeah,
But
positive.
it's kind of like finding out your high school if you have fond memories of high school and good friends from high school. Not everybody does, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like finding out your high school's not there anymore or something, like a part of you that just doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, I get a little nostalgic about that place for sure.
I feel like every guest I've had on has talked about it in like every episode.
And I'll tell you something, there was food there that you would never experience anywhere outside of there because they were bringing in health food ingredients from all the cultures of the world and bringing them together. So a lot of the Native Americans, a lot of the local New York produce, a lot of the Native American beans
I
and,
love
and
that.
grains and things like that. And then there was a Japanese influence because of the macrobiotic influence on health food at the time. So things like miso tahini on the this really dense like brown rice cornbread and like things that you'll never have anywhere else, you know, with like ruby kraut on it
Yeah.
and things like that. But Angelica Kitchen was more than just like a place where we would go to eat. It was a movement. It was a community hub. It was a place where thought sort of evolved for a lot of people around their relationship to food and eco issues, and like it was a very, very cool place. It wasn't just a restaurant. Like, like now we go to like the raw food restaurant or whatever, and it's like you go, you have a meal. It's very now. It's very in the moment, and then it's over. Angelica Kitchen was like a mindset. I don't know how to explain it, but and I'm not the only one that romanticizes it this way. Timmy, Mississippi
Yeah.
Vegan, who's a very popular food blogger and cookbook author and stuff, like he recognizes that restaurant as being really instrumental for him as well. He used to work there too.
That's so fun. I would probably have lived there.
That's
But
following this and really is interested in,
yeah,
because I can't imagine how many people are interested listening to me romanticize about Angelica Kitchen. But I did a podcast episode with Leslie, the owner, and I did a podcast episode with Timmy, Mississippi Vegan. Like, check those out if you want to know more about the culture. I think you've gotten this from me. Like, I'm interested more in the culture sometimes than I am of the details of holistic health. Like, because it's my
totally.
it's my culture. So it's like, yeah.
And it's like the philosophical point of it all is like super fascinating. I think it actually is what mo most people, more people cling on to. At least if you're like here listening to us, you probably are more interested in all of that. What was your favorite thing you made there?
Oh, let's see. There was a favorite standard. Wow, there's a favorite standard menu item, and it was called Soba Sensation, and it was buckwheat noodles with this
Yum.
creamy soba sauce it was very unique. It had things in it like it had like garlic, ginger, tahini, mustard, a little bit of brown rice syrup. Like it was a little more complex than the food that I eat today, but it had such a unique flavor. So like as a patron, I always loved that. But there's a couple of things. I still remember some of the most just wonderful meals that I've had in my life, and they were made by Chef Peter Burley. And a lot of us had love-hate relationships with Peter Burley. He was the head chef. He gave me my first job in a restaurant at Angelica Kitchen. And Peter made a couple of dishes there. One thing that he made, like, it was so simple. It was like, actually, this was at his house, but it was Angelica Kitchen food. We were testing a cookbook, and I was helping him test recipes for the cookbook. And it was just like, it was some like white rice and black beans and something else with like Celtic salt. And like, it was so simple, but
Mhm.
it's one of the most memorable things I've ever eaten. Yeah. So a lot of
Yeah.
that food, it was, yes, we played with culinary, we did some culinary alchemy, meaning like, we reduced things, we played with flavors, we mixed things, we did all that kind of stuff. But a lot of it was the freshness of the local food and the simplicity in the way we prepared it, that it was just exceptional. Yeah.
Yeah. Simplicity is everything. I think the best food is simple.
Yeah, I
Anyways,
agree.
that's
The older I
yeah,
get, the more I appreciate it.
definitely. Yeah, I most of my recipes are simple, most of what I make. I also think a lot of people don't have time, so that's another thing too. Food, cooking can be daunting to them because they think it's going to be this whole process, but it's not. It doesn't have to be at least. And that's the best food is the stuff that you spend less time on, less time beating and baking and whatever, all the stuff that we've done to our food. What's your opinion of vegan restaurants outside of Angelica's Kitchen? Do you prefer a vegan restaurant or would you rather go elsewhere?
Well, here's the thing. I generally don't go to most restaurants anymore. My diet
Mm,
has become quite so simple that I don't go to most restaurants. Here's what I think
yeah.
about vegan restaurants. I was actually in the early days of social media, probably, where are we at? Probably 10 years ago, or maybe a little more now, maybe like 12 years ago. I was thinking of doing an account that was just like a secret vegan diner kind of thing, where I was going to, because in living in New York, I had access to a lot of vegan restaurants. And I thought I'm going to start
Mhm.
critiquing a lot of these restaurants. And I never did that project. But one of the things that sort of motivated that was I think that there's a lot of bad food in vegan restaurants. Bad meaning not like hygienically bad, but I mean, the quality is just absolute garbage. Like it makes no sense. The menus make no sense. They try to pull inspiration from all these parts of the world. So they'll have like nori rolls that are, and then they'll have lasagna. Like it just makes no
Yeah.
sense from a culinary perspective. And a lot of the food is very subpar. And I think in the plant-based world for many years, I think people just were so happy to be able to get a plant-based option. They would let so much
Mhm.
go. And I feel like that sort of hurt the culinary world of plant-based food in a lot of ways.
I hear that. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
no like cohesion in the menu. There's no like for me, I'm like it's just so much man-made stuff. And like that's my problem with vegan restaurants in general. And I would honestly prefer to go to restaurants that just offer vegan options. And I like you, I obviously cook at home because we know how to cook and we we can and we enjoy it. We love it. But yeah, I can't. It's funny. I get asked a bunch what vegan restaurants I love. I love like ABCV. Have you? I don't know if it existed before you left New York,
It
but I don't
did,
know if
but
you went.
my last 5 years of being in New York, I was working 16 hours a day, almost 7 days a week, trying to just running that studio that I never really got to
Yeah.
go anywhere to eat. Like it's just I never got to go to the new
Mm,
places. So ABCV, yeah, like I've heard that's a great place. I never had the
yeah.
opportunity to go. My favorite was Pure Food and Wine, which may reopen, fingers
Oh,
crossed, but that was my
yeah.
favorite. That was my favorite place to eat as far as getting like really good quality raw food and salads. Of course, Angelica Kitchen, even though I didn't eat as much of that food in my, in the later years of that restaurant, still always holds a warm place in my heart. But yeah, most of the other ones around the city, aside from some good juice bars, really sort of, I think they're more of a letdown than anything else. But Pure Food and
Yeah.
Wine, I thought was the best.
So something I've heard you say previously that really stuck with me. And I mentioned this on our episode of your podcast. There's no way you could have done this, aka gotten into the cleansing life, if you weren't able to recreate the flavors and recipes of food that you had previously. I've literally reused that line myself because I liked it so much and it's so true and it was so well said. Could you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, there's something within us, I think, that likes to play with food and has a lot of emotional and cellular memory of all the things that we grew up on. And I'm not a disciplined person, so if this life were all about abstinence and I just had to eat like oranges and almonds all the time or something like that, I don't think I'd be very happy. And in the early days when I first got into this, I was trying to figure it out. I had no culinary experience. I didn't have any real life experience at that point. And I was looking at like Dr. Fred Bishy's intermediate diet outline, and I'm like, he doesn't teach you how to make food. He just tells you what to do to improve your body chemistry. So I was like cooking up some brown rice with like no salt and putting like canned chickpeas on top and just eating it. And like, it was horrible. Like the food didn't taste good at
Yeah.
all. And then when I went to, and remember I said I was eating salads with like no dressing on it, and like it was all really
Yeah.
good for my body. It was like a cleanse. But then when
Totally.
I went to culinary school and I had all these ideas in my head, like food combining and this and like all of these sort of principles in my mind. And then I get to culinary school and it's 10 a.m. and we're making stir fries and casseroles and like we're kind of like doing all these different food techniques. And I was like, if I don't just loosen up and taste these things and be a part of this, I'm like not going to get what I want to get out of this program. So I realized I was like, oh, over time, as I refined my culinary skills, I was like, I could make, and listen, for somebody listening, this is going to sound absurd at first, but once I got through the detoxification periods and I really changed my microbiome and I was very consistent, I can make salads that satisfy me the same way that pizza does. Now, I know somebody that's, not someone that's eating a slice of pizza right now is like, get the fuck out of here with that stupid comment. But for real, like I'll put in like sun-dried tomatoes and like really great raw olives and some dried oregano and garlic and like, and by the time I'm done eating it, I feel very satisfied. Like, yes. And then I truly crave that. And I no longer walk past the pizzeria and I'm like battling this thing in my head where I'm like, I have to eat that. I have to, the food cravings are gone. Like I'm an indulgent person. So once I changed my microbiome, once I was consistent and sort of erased that cellular addiction that we have to these foods, I was able to just recreate the same sensations and get the same pleasure out of eating a salad or something else, or making like zucchini pasta with like the richest raw tomato sauce, sun-dried tomatoes and peppers and fresh like heirloom tomatoes all blended with olive oil and garlic. And like, it's great, and it's so much better. And I don't feel deprived at all.
We are such like pleasure seekers, and food is a drug, and it's obviously something that like I love. I'm a foodie. I love to recreate the flavors of things that I grew up with, but it's just using high quality ingredients. There's a way to accomplish both and to live in a world where food can taste good and also make you feel good. And you don't have to leave your meal feeling like garbage and having to be rolled out of the restaurant or wherever you are at home. Hope you don't have to be rolled out of your home. Something also about food combining and getting into the cleansing lifestyle that I think is the coolest part is that self-awareness muscle also that you are building and working. You start to just become aware of your body and what makes you feel good and what makes you, what doesn't work for you. For example, in college, food actually was something that I used really to maintain control because I had anxiety and I dealt with like just a terrible amount of anxiety. I deprived myself a lot. And then I basically, once I started food combining, it was logical, it made sense, and I think I fell in love with food because I was able to flip the script on it. And instead of, it being this thing of control for me, it turned into a love for food as a vehicle for creativity and fulfillment and nourishment. And it was just this aha moment I had when I realized, like, oh, this is why I love food. This is what lights me up. This is what fills me up. But it's this really crazy, I'm obsessed with food a different way, in a non-druggy way. Does that make sense?
Yes, because, well, here's the thing and when we're trying to eat healthy food, what we're trying to do is we're trying to sort of unravel the food addiction, right? So when we go to, when like people are eating regular food, right? It's anything goes in those kitchens. It's even in a fresh food place, even in like a Gordon Ramsay restaurant or something like that. It's like refinement to the end. Like there's all sorts of reductions and things that just don't exist in nature, and they light up the pleasure centers in our brain. Processed food being like real drugs. Processed food being like, the meth, and then like, higher quality foods. But even though they've been tinkered with so much that they really light us up. And then when I realized, like, when I got to Angelica Kitchen too, like I was a pastry chef for a while, and I was like, now I'm eating healthy food. And we would start out with all of these natural sweeteners. So things like brown rice syrup and maple syrup. And I would make a caramel sauce out of this by like boiling it down and down and down into like this thick syrup. And then I would add some type of soy milk or something, and it was this creamy caramel. But then I realized, I was like, I just refined the shit out of this thing. Like, so it's like, we're not really, like, we're kind of doing the same thing, but with healthier ingredients. So as you get to a place like where you and me are, with like the way that you work with food now, you've brought it down to this simpler place where we're fine tuning and sort of dialing in where we can create like a joyful culinary experience without all the refinement.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's just making it a joyful experience. It's funny that the soy milk of it all, I'm sure you now are just like, what was I doing?
I used to drink a ton of that stuff. Yeah.
In your, like when you were first vegan, that was definitely something you leaned on.
Interesting. Yes, it was definitely something I leaned on. And interesting though, when I used to kind of eat those like borderline, like whatever processed vegan foods or whatever, my body still did so much better than when I used to eat the Mickey D's and dollar slices and like the whatever. Like it was still a great improvement, so people can get it. They don't have to be perfect. Yeah. The progress, not perfection. Yeah.
Yep. Totally. Yeah. Anyone who's just starting out, if it's right, exactly what you said. If that's what your switch is, you will see improvement. And then you'll go deeper into it, which I think is the coolest part. What is your most creative dish to date that you've made, even at home?
Interesting. I think I think what people would probably appreciate most, there's a series, I think this one in particular, I'm going to say, this is something so I started a company many years ago called Sweet Dreams and Spice that it never scaled. I was never able to scale it. And it was a series of raw food bars, and they were all handmade, and it was sort of based off of the Glazer Farms little temple balls and all that stuff. I don't know if you know what those are. They're little raw food balls that are pretty tasty, but from a culinary perspective, they needed improvement. So I made them into bars, and we used to make these big sheets and cut them. And this one is just, I can't believe how good it is. And I teach people how to make this in my academy in the Cleansing Kitchen Essentials class.
Nice.
And it's the vanilla pistachio bars. And it's made with real vanilla bean, pistachios, dates, Hunza raisins, Celtic sea salt. It is like, I don't even know how to explain it. It is one of the most delicious things I've ever had in my life. And it is so simple. Yeah. I make a raw cacao brownie in there too that a lot of people lose their minds over, and that's pretty good as well. But this vanilla pistachio bar, if I could have anything in the world like that, if someone said, you know, like, what do you want right now? I'd be like, give me that.
Oh, you have a sweet tooth.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's so funny. How much fruit do you eat in a day?
I don't know, but it's usually about 50% of my calories, I would say.
Yeah, I was just curious.
I do a lot of salads and olives and nuts and seeds and vegetables at night. You might not see that much on Instagram because by the time we get to that point of the day, it's just like, you know, children and things. And like, it's like, I don't do videos anymore.
That's beyond valid.
Also, the basil dressing and the Vitality Broom Cleanse. I love those dressings. You can make it with dill. You can make it with basil. Like that will make anything taste good. Chop up avocado, corn, red onion, salad greens, throw them together, basil dressing on it in the summer. It's like out of this world. Yeah.
That sounds so fab. Switching gears, I'm a private chef here as well, and I've been conducting these surveys on the phone with families in New York and basically just trying to feel out how they plan their meals for the week for them and their families, just how they prep, execution, all that good stuff, how much, you know, goes into it for them. There's a couple things I noticed across the board. And one is that chicken and broccoli are the number one go-tos. And then number two is that families with younger kids love frozen food. That's not a crazy thought. I used to eat or ride French fries when I was younger, so that's not novel. Anyways, I know you have kids, so I have two questions for you. One, if you could replace chicken and broccoli as a staple in these households, what would you replace it with?
Well, for our family, I mean, our chicken and broccoli, I guess, is we usually go for more evolved, nutrient-dense grains. So we do things like quinoa and tofu, but we do a lot of broccoli and cauliflower and things like that. Interestingly, my son really likes food with hot sauce on it. So we use Joey's hot sauce on some of the food. Or sometimes I make my own actually, but I don't always have time to do it. And he'll do that. But yeah, I use different forms of like tofu, tempeh. Sometimes I do things with them where I'll make them a whole grain and some tempeh, and I'll make like a ginger peanut sauce, things like that. And they just love it. Yeah.
Nicole has a really fabulous hot sauce recipe, actually, that I'll plug right here. It's really good. I have made it a few times, sometimes maybe more than a few times.
She's got some gems. Yeah, she's got some gems. Totally.
She's awesome. Number two, what food would you keep in the freezer for your kids?
So there's a direct correlation between consuming, well, first of all, any antioxidant rich berries, but consuming blueberries, and toddlers for some reason love frozen blueberries. It's a known thing. So I would keep frozen blueberries, and we do. Sometimes he likes frozen cherries instead or whatever, but like he'll just pound like bowls of frozen blueberries, and a cup of blueberries, and that's for an adult. I don't know how much it would need to be. There's a direct relationship to improving brain health and cognition. So that's a good one to have, is frozen blueberries.
Oh wow. What about for dinner?
Oh, frozen foods for dinner. We don't do too many frozen foods for dinner. Like we don't have stuff like that. Every once in a while there'll be an Amy's gluten-free frozen burrito sitting in the fridge. I think we probably have a couple in there now, and those are good for when the day's gotten away from everybody. But usually, even if the day's gotten away from us, we always go with like a fresh meal that we make for the kids.
What would you give to kids who are not yours, but kids that are picky eaters?
Well, the picky eater thing, the way I think about this is I let children, this is going to sound horrible, I let them be hungry until they're ready to eat what we have. And it doesn't mean if a kid hates one thing over and over again, that's fine. You hate this thing. We're not going to force you to eat a food you don't like. And, you know, like, so for our kids, when it's like, oh, I like this last week or 2 weeks ago, but now I don't want it. I want to eat this instead. For the most part, we're like, dinner's here and this is it. And more times than not, they eat it. And
Like you don't have a choice.
well, yeah, and the reason I do it that way is because, I always thought about it, and I'm like, I see the picky eating thing, and I see like certain kids that where the moms are all like they're constipated, they're dehydrated, they'll only eat goldfish and the cheese string things. That's all they'll eat, and I'm like, first of all, it's not all they'll eat. You've set up their microbiome and their food cravings that way. And B, if we were in a natural world, those wouldn't exist, and they would be eating whatever game meat and roots that you pulled out of the ground. And those children all over the world live on what's available because they don't have this weird choice. I think it's more of a psychological thing than it is an actual aversion to the food they're being presented. So usually when we hold the boundary, he eats just fine. And sometimes he just doesn't eat. And it's like, that's cool. And a lot of the times kids actually don't need all the food that we think that they need. So when the kid's like, I'm not hungry, it's just like, kid's probably not hungry.
Yeah, you should let them listen to their body instead of trying to force it. That makes sense.
Then inevitably, it's bedtime, and 2 minutes before bed, they're like, "Can I have something to eat?" And what we do is we just go, "No, you can eat tomorrow." And then in 5 minutes, he's asleep, and it's like, "Yep." And then tomorrow morning, it's like, "I'm hungry," and then he eats, what he wants in the morning. So, so I'm a big fan of like just holding the boundary with that stuff. As long as you're giving your kids good food, and as long as the kid really just doesn't hate the thing, you don't have to force them to eat something that they just personally don't like. But when they're being picky and they're like, I don't want this because it has texture. Like my son pulls all the white part off of the orange. He doesn't want the white part on the orange, right? And one day, I was like, all right, let me peel this shit off so he doesn't like peel it all over the floor. And my wife's like, no, don't do that. Like present it the way that it is. And then if he's got a thing, like let him do it, but don't feed into his like weird little toddler preferences. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, we're not going to do that. So he gets I peel the orange for him and I give it to him. And if he wants to peel the white spots off, that's on him, if he's going to do some picky behavior like that. But we don't feed into it. We don't cater it. We don't make 3 different types of foods to like try to figure out what we can get inside of them. We're like, this is what we're eating tonight. You got it or you don't. I think that's the wisest way to go forward.
Yeah, I talked to a woman yesterday. She said that it was one of the first conversations I had when I did this survey where she actually said her kid eats the same thing that they do, to expose her kid to different flavors and textures and everything. And I'm not a parent, but like I can see why that's important. Just like exposing your kids to everything. So on a totally different note, back to our shit talking. I wanted to know, what's the last food you saw in the grocery store that you were like, what the hell is this?
God, every time I go to Costco, I'm like, what the hell is this? Here it is. I got it in Costco. It was calamari crisps. Like instead of potato chips, it's like, how like they do like pork rinds and stuff. Yeah, it was like some type of crunchy octopus.
In a bag?
In a bag. Like
no.
And I was like, are we out of our minds? Are humans out of their minds? First of all, we know how smart octopus. No, wait, it's
octopod.
Wait, I don't think it's octopi. It's like It's like octopod or
octopoddy.
It's I just learned this the other day through one of my son's books. I'm messing this all up, but anyway, we can move on from that. But yes, like we know how intelligent, and yet we're eating them up like fucking potato chips. Like, what on earth is wrong with humanity? I get hunter-gatherers, I get eating animals, I get the whole thing, I get eating fish, but like when you're crisping up octopus and eating it like a little snack, like it's just a disgusting display of disrespect to the animal world. It's messed up.
Oh, that's nasty.
Isn't that awful? It's an awful one.
I didn't even know that existed.
But I remember I had so much compassion for this one woman. I remember at Costco, right outside the produce, they have these tables of like cupcakes and like all the things, it's just all white flour, dairy product, sugar, all of it. And there was a woman and there's a younger woman with her, and they both looked like they'd been eating a lot of processed food for like their entire lives. And one of them was in one of those little carts, like one of those little scooters that she couldn't walk around the store. And they was just sitting there with like them. And the woman in the scooter had her mouth hanging open and she was just fixed on these things. And she's just rolling up to the cupcakes. And I just felt so bad. I was like, this is someone whose entire life, their entire body has been destroyed by processed food. And I could just tell they were so addicted, and I just had so much compassion for them. And I was just like, God, what are we doing as a culture? You know, I mean, this has been going on since before I was born, but you know, now we've sort of reached new levels with it. I'm like, this is just, it's so sad that this is what happens to people.
Yeah, it's like we've gone either people are like health freaks, like in a way that's unhealthy, or they've leaned so to the opposite. There's too much out there, too much stuff, too many, I don't know, too many different attitudes about food and everything. So that's really tough.
And
But
getting back to what we were saying though, you know, like
yeah,
that's what you're trying to do in a culinary perspective is give people that joy of eating again without
yeah,
destroying themselves. Like I think on my podcast that we sort of started talking about that Anthony Bourdain quote, you know, if I got it right,
yeah,
I should have Googled it, but you know, your body's not a temple, it's a roller coaster, enjoy the ride. And it's like,
right.
there's a fine balance between that. Like I get when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I'm 20 something years old. I'm traveling. I'm eating local food. I get all that. But then at a certain
Hmm.
point, it's like food creates disease. And how indulgent are we going to be? And where are we going to go? Yes, I'm living life. But, you know, I really do have to tighten things up a little bit here, you know? And
Yeah.
obviously, we see the extremes of it. But like, where do we get that nice balance? And I think that's why your work is so important. Your culinary work is great and the education you do around it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely want everyone to Whole Foods first is my first mission, and then also just again recreating the foods that you love. You can have those things, but keeping in mind what ingredients you're using because they can be harmful. But another thing is that I read an article you did with Cindy uh, for the Thinking Cap. Shout out to Cindy. She was my first episode on this channel.
I love her.
Awesome.
She's incredible.
She's the
One of
best.
the best humans ever.
I totally agree. I read you were discussing diet, and she basically that like people are more when it comes to diet, people are more interested in hearing about what they should be adding in and not about what they should be taking out. And I thought that was really interesting, and it was so well said because it was something I hadn't really thought about. It's as humans, we'd rather hear about what we should be having, and not coming from a place of, I guess it's coming from a place of rigidity, right? Telling people what to leave out, or at least it is to the Gen Pop, I suppose. But with that, I'm curious, what's one thing you wish people would add in, and one thing you wish they would take out with food?
I wish people would add in raw juices
Hmm.
and I wish people would leave out cooked oils.
Like any
Yeah.
cooked oil.
Yeah, I think that it causes a lot of aging and problems for people. I think it causes free radicals. There's a lot of glycation end products when it comes to cooking oils. And I think their food would really, regardless of what it is, I think that it would be really uplifted, like as far as its freshness and its vitality, if they just use some raw oils after. There's a big difference between oiling up like a piece of chicken and grilling it versus steaming the chicken and then tossing it with like fresh olive oil, herbs, garlic, and sea salt. Like there's a huge
Yeah.
difference in the toxic load of each one of those meals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people culinarily would argue with you on like the fact that you need oils to get a certain flavor or reach a certain texture that they want out of their foods. But you're talking strictly from just like a health perspective.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there's place for
Yeah.
both. There's one dish that I wanted to try that I thought about. It was from Anthony Bourdain's show.
Oh,
There was a dish that like people travel from all over to get, and it's something called chicken rice, and they just like it's like boiled rice with like turmeric and ginger and some boiled chicken, and like it's this whole thing that they do. I think it was in Singapore, and
mhm,
so like there is a place for that, but I get the texture and like when they're searing meats and stuff like that. But
mhm,
that is what is responsible for most of our disease today. It's all that cooked oil. It's
yeah,
heating at high temperatures. It denatures the proteins. It causes free radical damage. It changes the structure of the oil, and it's like that's why and listen, I think he's had some work done, but that's why Gordon Ramsay's face looks like a deflated basketball. Like it's just like
yeah,
that man is young. Gordon Ramsay, right? His face is so
Yeah.
wrinkled. That's free radical damage. And that's a man that's eaten a lot of
Mm.
cooked oil and animal food his whole life. Now,
Yeah.
God bless him. He's got a lot of energy and all that kind of stuff, but like you can see the damage in his face.
Yeah. And it gets it decreases the nutrients that are in a vegetable or anything you're eating. It really ruins the integrity of what you're having nutritionally. So I understand that.
This sounds really
Um,
boring, but the healthiest way to cook anything is water cooking. And I don't mean sautéing onions in a pan with water. Like that's I get how that's really like not interesting. But when you steam your vegetables or you steam your proteins or whatever, and then you toss them together with a really vibrant dressing or some kind of marinade, that's where I focus most of my attention on. I realized that when I was into raw foods, and I was exclusively into raw foods for about 7 years, and I wanted to start experimenting eating cooked food again, but I didn't want to start eating like tofu sandwiches and vegan pizzas. And like, that's not where I was going. I just wanted to have some like steamed broccoli or like a baked beet or something. So I was like, well, I realized that like eating steamed broccoli is not taking years off of people's lives, right? So when it comes to like rigid food philosophies, like yes, raw food is really valuable, but if you're going to eat cooked food, it's like, where does it get destructive? Well, it gets destructive when we use things that aren't natural, that aren't foods. Cotton seed oil, rapeseed oil, safflower oil. Nobody's eating these things anyway. And then we're heat or chemical solvent refining them. And then we're cooking our foods in them. We're either deep frying or
yeah.
searing it. I was like, that's where the food starts to get destructive. Like, oh, if I steam broccoli, that doesn't hurt anybody. If you drizzle raw olive oil on it, that doesn't hurt anybody. But when you take the olive oil and you throw it in the oven and you put oil all over it and then you turn it and it's all blackened and the oil's heated, and I go, that's not killing anybody tonight. But what I mean by this is like, yes, over time of constantly denaturing oils and denaturing food and doing these things to it, I'm like, that is what causes aging. And that is a challenge the body needs to work through. So I try to figure out like, how can I have the best of both? How do I get some good cooked food, but I keep the important parts fresh and vibrant? I keep the salt raw. I use some lemon or apple cider vinegar or some raw olive oil or whatever, toss it all together. And I'm like, this is just as good. And I don't feel horrible after eating it. And I don't see signs of free radical damage all over my body. So
Yeah.
I don't remember where we were going with that, but yeah.
I love that because I will even like par steam something, not all the way through, but if I want to roast you are cutting the roast time in half, so it doesn't have to be at that high temp for as long either. So if you do ultimately want to roast something, you can, if you just steam it a little bit, just so you can kind of get it like just slightly fork tender, then you just don't have to roast it as much or for as long. So
You can
I
dry
totally,
roast as well and then put the
yeah,
oil on
yes,
later too. Yeah.
totally. I do that with red peppers if I want to make like a really yummy pasta sauce or something. That's like the best. We're gonna do a quick fire of foods that are in the zeitgeist, are a bit trendy. And you can give a sentence, you can give a word, you can explain yourself, anything you want. But this is the floor is yours. I'm gonna just list off some things.
Oh boy.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, this is fun. I know you'd like this. Acai bowls.
I think they're great.
Yeah?
I mean, I don't eat
Good.
them, but I think they're great for people. I think acai is loaded with antioxidants. I think that people should have a little bit more granola in their life. So
Yeah.
I think they're fine. Yeah.
Okay, fabulous. Avocado toast.
If somebody's using a good Ezekiel bread, fantastic.
Bone broth.
I make jokes about this sometimes. I think it could be very nutritionally fortifying. And I think this is why a lot of women, particularly women that have given birth and are breastfeeding, I think that's why they sort of gravitate towards that. And in general, I think if it makes somebody feel good, I think it's fine.
Okay, cool. Chia seeds.
I love them. I
Do
use
you?
white chia. The nutrition in white chia is absurd compared to black chia. It's one of the most nutritious seeds that we can eat. And however, as a colon-hydrotherapist, I will tell you, you have to grind those things or chew them really, really well if you want to actually absorb the nutrition from them. So I like to grind them up and I put them in the superfood bars that I make at the Academy. Because, who's going to eat ground chia? I mean, you could take a spoon. They don't taste great. But when you put them in something, I think it's really good.
I'm going to look into white chia. I did not know about that. Smooth move tea.
Great in a pinch. Works really well. Yeah.
Really?
Don't abuse it, though. Yeah. take it once a year, take it. Oh my God, I got back. My colon-hydrotherapist is booked out for a couple of weeks. I just got back from a trip, jet lagged, dehydrated from the plane. I need something to help me. Do Smooth Move. It'll work. It should work great. There's Smooth Move. There's Swiss Chris, which is Smooth Move. That's another herbal formulation. There's Natural Calm, which is magnesium citrate, which can help too. I did something, I'm going to tell you a little side story here. I did something really, so Gil and I used to work out of a one room, very similar. So in the apartment in front of the one that he works out of now, we used to work together. And so you know the way that it works. There's one bathroom, and that's the colonic room. One bathroom, and that's the colonic room, and then there's the rest of the studio. And I don't know what got into me, but I think I was moving or something. I was trying to get through stuff, and I found 2 Smooth Move tea bags. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to drink these now. I don't know what I was thinking. And I did a double doses. Yeah, for no reason. And I was like, I'm just going to, and then I was like, it won't hit me till later. I only have one person I have to run in and see tonight. And I'm working on the person. And then I start sweating, and I'm like, holy shit. And so anyway, I'm just going to leave everybody with that. But it was a very interesting evening that night.
Okay, so yeah, it works.
And it works. I don't know what made me do that, but yeah, that stuff works. But just don't repetitively take anything with senna in it or any of these, because over time your body can start to. This is a lot of time. The body can start to wait for that to be the signal. This is why a lot of people use caffeine to go to the bathroom too, because they're so addicted. They're in the coffee culture and their body knows it's coming. That one's a little bit easier to get out of. Like, you can quit coffee and then get your bowels working again. But when you're using the herbal laxatives, your body starts going like, hey, where's that stimulation? Where is it? Where'd it go? Oh, it's not here anymore. And it just stops going. So you don't want to create that dependency on laxatives. It takes a while to do that, but I know people that have done that. So you want to be careful. So Smooth Move, great in a pinch, totally safe.
I did not realize it was more powerful than coffee in that sense of like getting rid of, so that for laxative purposes. That's so interesting.
Yeah, don't get on a plane. Don't go to a Broadway show, or so don't go out for the night. Don't go on a date after you've taken Smooth. Don't go do a colonic on another person if you've done that. Not the best. Not the best plan of action.
That's really funny. Have you heard of ceremonial cacao?
Oh, that's huge over here in Ashland, Oregon. Yeah.
Really? What do you think of it?
I don't know. I actually don't even know what makes it any different. I just know that there's a lot of, I don't know what the word is, but there's a lot of pageantry and stuff around. I don't know if that's the right word, around there's a lot of performance and stuff around the ceremonial cacao. There's a lot of cacao ceremonies here. Let me put it that way. Now, listen, I'm sort of joking around about it, but if someone invited me to a cacao ceremony, I'd probably be like, all right, let's go. I'm joking around about it, but it's just funny because everybody talks about it around here. And I just go like, like, what is that?
Hitting the cacao too hard. What do you think of mushroom-based coffee? That's a thing now.
I know there's a lot of data on mushrooms, how they affect the immune system and how they're good for the brain and all these things. And I'm sure that it's all very true. I've never really experienced it in a way where I'm like, yeah, I took these mushrooms and I like think clearer. I've never experienced anything like that. I love the mushroom coffees though, as a transition out of coffee culture. Because I think you can make lattes and things with these, and obviously it's not going to be the same as coffee. Coffee has a very special place because it is that intoxicating, like rich kind of experience that people just love. So I understand. Yeah. I make coffee every day. I don't drink caffeine, but I make it for my wife every morning, right? And she gets this really good organic stuff from it's a local company, but obviously they're not growing it in Oregon. But he sources it all. So I make it, and as soon as I open it up and smell it, like, God, it's intoxicating. Like, so I understand. But if someone's like, look, I'm really addicted to this thing, but I got to get coffee out of my life. It's dehydrating me. It's taking my adrenals for a ride. And they get into a mushroom coffee that's not caffeinated because they make hybrids. But if it's just pure mushrooms and you make that with some like cashew milk or whatever, like it creates a new ritual. Like the beverage, it can be really satisfying. And I've made some of these as I tested them out. I'm going to add some of these to the Academy actually. And I ordered the non-caffeinated blends from Four Sigmatic to play with it a little bit. And they're tasty. They can be really good. And if they have all these great like immune enhancing benefits and stuff, then even better. But I look at it more as a way to get away from caffeine.
Is cashew milk your favorite of the alternative milks?
No, well, we don't buy any of those things. I make them all fresh. And the one that I make,
Mm.
and I do this because out of all of the nuts, the one that comes out on top is having the best, having the greatest benefit for health in regard to heart health and in regard to cancer prevention is walnuts. So I make a walnut milk. I do put in some cashews to give it a little bit of richness, but it's primarily a walnut milk. Sweeten it with
Hmm.
dates, and then for my wife, I usually put like maple syrup in, vanilla, some cinnamon, and I make those for her lattes every day. And sometimes my son will drink a glass of it or whatever. But for the but we
Oh,
don't buy
cool.
any of them. Cashews are good just to create a little richness, but walnuts are the ones that are probably going to have the greatest health outcome if you're looking for something really like really nutritious, good essential fatty acids in walnuts. Like they're some of the best.
Oh, cool. One of my friends just told me too. She uses it. She's in our world. She uses it for lactation as well. She's a new mom, and she said it's really beneficial for that as well.
Oh,
Fun fact for anyone listening.
she drinks it
She
to
does.
promote.
She eats a couple. She'll eat like a couple walnuts to promote lactation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good move.
Last one. I already know how you feel about this, but I think it's important for everyone to hear fermented foods and beverages.
Well, fermented foods like properly fermented olives, pickles, and sauerkrauts, and carrots, and beets, and all that stuff are fantastic. They're so good. Kimchi is like good quality kimchi that's still alive and active. Everything, anything in the glass jar in the refrigerator that's not pasteurized is going to be great. Some of the beverages are pretty much nonsense. Things like kombucha and things like, look, I'll drink one once in a while. I like them, but they're just loaded with
Yeah.
gas, alcohol, and yeast. It's not what people think they are.
Yeah.
It's not what they've been marketed to be. So if you like them, good. If it gets you off soda, good. If you're just enjoying life and kombucha tastes good, drink it. But if you're wondering why you're burping and farting or feeling a little bloated, or if you think you're doing it for your gut health, like you can just get a jar of sauerkraut instead because that's going to be probably like 100 times more powerful. They
Totally.
tested they tested the scobies, and all the scobies are different. Like there's no sort of like universal levels of everything. They all range in how much beneficial bacteria they have, but they are mostly dominant in yeast. And you can smell it when you open it up. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it doesn't mean that it's candida. It's not a candida drink, but
Hmm.
it's not like fermented it's not a lactobacillus drink. That's not what it is.
Would you categorize like the like Olipop and Poppy, like those new the new sodas? Would you put them in that category of like the not so good stuff? Or what do you think?
That's
I guess that's something on the I didn't even put on the list, but now it is.
Yeah, raw kombucha is going to be much healthier than those.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
much healthier. I don't even put those in the same category.
It's so
People,
funny. Yeah.
they play with this idea of probiotics. Like I noticed in
Yeah.
our tea cabinet, there's some peppermint tea with probiotics. And I'm like, what probiotics are you pouring, 212-degree water over that's going to survive? Like, what do you mean there's
Right.
probiotics in the tea? Like, it's just like, I don't know what they're thinking. Like, it doesn't make sense. Um,
No, totally.
yeah, you want living cultures of bacteria coming into the body. So, and in kombucha will have a varying amount. Who knows how much? But like I said, it's mostly yeast. The ones from what I understand, I'm pretty sure that anything in a can is going to have to be pasteurized,
Mm. Yeah.
right? That's why we don't
I
put raw juice in a can. Like it's going to have to
yeah.
be pasteurized. So I can't see how it's going to be valuable.
I remember I had the because I love root beer. I grew up on it. It's like one
Mm.
of my favorite flavors. So I tried the Olipop root beer and it like it killed my stomach. Like I've never in my life. I mean, and that's something I remember thinking like, don't you can't just have this in public. Nobody should just be drinking this, but people are drinking it everywhere. Like you with the smooth move. I was like, oh my God, do not ever drink this outside of the home or anything. It's like that one's a killer. It's insane.
Well, anytime somebody shakes up a bottle and opens it, if it explodes, that's the same pressure you're putting into your body. Like, there's no big
That's
mystery there.
interesting.
People are like, oh, like the owner of GTS Kombucha got into it with me. I made an Instagram reel about kombucha.
Uh-huh.
and he kind of got into it with me in the comments, and he was saying that I was basically, that everything I was saying wasn't true. And I was like, look, I'm a colon-hydrotherapist. It doesn't take, a NASA scientist to tell you that if you drink something with pressurized air in it, that's going to release in your intestines. And he's like, oh, the effervescence actually helps with bloating. And I was like, where do you go with that? That makes no sense. I was just like, all right, dude, your kombucha is actually tasty, but I'm not trying to spread ill will here, but it's going to load people with gas. There's just no denying that. There's no denying it. And I've seen it on the treatment table. The people that drink kombucha are loaded with gas.
The thing vibrates. The what's it called? The tube vibrates. It goes up and down. It bounces.
Yeah.
From all the gas, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kombucha. But one thing I used to do is we used to flatten it. So we'd get the kombucha and we would pour it from glass to glass, and you could just, it keeps fizzing off. And after a minute, you can release a lot of that pressure in there if you still want to drink it. But like I said, I'll just pop one and drink one. I don't want people to think I'm this absolute purist, but I'm just trying to let people know if you're experiencing that and you drink that, that's why. It's not for gut health. It's just for fun. It's the healthiest soda you can buy.
That's a great tip for everybody to know, because that's obviously a thing right now in our world. That was it on the quick fire. You did a great job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Those were fun.
A lot of people on Instagram ask questions. We're going to take that over to the bonus episode that you can find on Patreon. But for those who are not, for some reason, heading over to Patreon, can you let the people know where they can find you?
Oh, yeah. Everybody can find me on Instagram, TikTok. It's EveryDay Detox. You can go to EveryDayDetoxAcademy.com if you want to check out the master classes. And if you are local to Southern Oregon, you can come see me at Ashland Gravity Colonics.com if you want to get a treatment. But yeah, those are my spots. That's where you find me. And also on YouTube. So a lot of my podcasts, the Everyday Detox podcast, it's also on YouTube, Everyday Detox, so you can find that.
And now a brief message from our sponsor. It's me. I'm the sponsor. And I wanted to tell you about the Combined by Ilana Patreon, because for $10 a month, you are getting weekly meal plans to follow with recipes and grocery lists, personalized mini consults with me, where you can tell me all about your gut health, bonus content from all of the interviews that I'm doing. You'll also get access to the Combined by Ilana community board, early access to IRL events and virtual events, not to mention 50% off my 3-day food combining challenge ebook and 30% off of all Combined by Ilana merch. And trust me, there's plenty more to come. Now let's get back to the episode.